As an airline pilot, one of my greatest fears is a single missed radio call that leads to a runway incursion that leads to a potential disaster like what happened last night at Tokyo's Haneda Airport, Japan. Miraculously, everybody on board this Japan Airlines A350 was able to be safely evacuated. Unfortunately, on the Japanese Coast Guard Dash 8 aircraft, only the captain survived. Here's what we know so far. My name's Juan Brown. You're watching the Blanco Lirio channel, starting first with the Aviation Safety Network on Tuesday, the 2nd of January, 2024. Airbus A350-900, Japan Airlines. 0 fatalities on board the A350. 379 occupants safely evacuated. 5 fatalities on board the Japanese Coast Guard Dash 8 aircraft. Japan Airlines Flight 516, an Airbus A350-900, collided with a Japan Coast Guard de Havilland Dash 8 aircraft on the runway at Tokyo Haneda Airport. The Dash 8, which was on its way to transport supplies to Niigata in response to the recent Noto Peninsula earthquake, which happened just the previous day, had taxied onto runway 34 right via taxiway Charlie 5 as Japan Airlines 516 was on final approach. After touchdown, the A350 struck the Dash 8. The nose section on the A350 suffered severe damage and a fire erupted in both aircraft. All occupants on the A350 evacuated safely. The captain of the Dash 8 Japan Coast Guard aircraft also survived. The remaining crew of 5 were killed in the accident. Here's the Jepson 10-9 page for the Haneda Airport. This accident occurred on runway 34 right at the Charlie 5 intersection. If we zoom in on this, Charlie 5 is this 90-degree intersection right here, up just about 1,600 feet down the runway, right in the touchdown zone, the normal touchdown zone for an aircraft like the Airbus A350. Note Charlie 5 is a 90-degree taxiway. It is not one of the angled high-speed taxiways. Looking here on Google Maps, satellite view, runway 35 right, 34 right, correction. Here's the end of the runway right here. Charlie 1 is way back here at the beginning of the displaced threshold. Charlie 2, Charlie 3, Charlie 4, and Charlie 5 located right here. And that is just about 1,600 feet down the runway. So here's your 1,500-foot runway markers. That represents the normal touchdown zone for an aircraft like the Airbus 350. So if this Dash 8 was located on the runway right here at Charlie 5, he would be right in the landing zone for the Airbus A350. When landing at night, it is very difficult to see another aircraft on the runway. Another aircraft on this runway right here, especially pointed away from you, would just have a pair of nav lights, maybe one red rotating beacon on board, and a tail light. Very hard to see. It would just be a dark spot in all of those lights on the runway. Very difficult to see at night. This is a picture of the Japanese Coast Guard Dash 8 de Havilland aircraft, a much smaller twin turboprop aircraft of a shoulder wing or high wing design with a tall T-tail. At this time, we do not have the ATC transcripts of the accident, but I believe this is the scratchy ATC audio from real or live ATC of the clearance for the Coast Guard aircraft. Being in Japan, the international language for all ATC communications is English. Good evening, number 1. Taxi to holding spot Charlie 5 is what I can vaguely understand from this ATC audio. So investigators will be looking at all of this ATC audio to see who was cleared to do what. And at this time, it sounds like the Japanese Coast Guard Dash 8 was instructed to taxi to spot Charlie 5, but it's not clear in this ATC instruction if he was told to hold short of runway 34 right, as would have been the appropriate radio call. Again, here's that holding spot Charlie 5 short of runway 34 right. Now, watching the video slow down, it's virtually impossible to see the Dash 8, but what is clear is that the fuel in the wings of the Dash 8, the fuel tanks are immediately ruptured, and that fuel immediately ignites. What's also clear in this video is that the nose gear has been damaged on the A350, and the aircraft is skidding along on its nose gear. The nose gear is either ripped off of the airplane or folded up. Excellent job by the crew of the Japan Airlines A350, getting everybody off safely. A lot of questions in the media. What was going through the pilot's mind? They had no idea. They probably never saw this aircraft until they hit him, and once they hit him, they probably had no idea what just the heck just happened. So they were lucky that they were able to keep going straight down the runway with no nose gear steering. You're primarily going straight down the runway just based on the inertia of the landing. They collided at nearly 140 miles per hour, and the only other steering capability the captain might have is some differential wheel braking on the main brakes. But it looks like he was able to keep it mostly on the runway, just came off the runway to the right here towards the end. And then, great job by the crew and the passengers by staying organized as this thing slowly started to burn. It was eventually completely destroyed by fire, as the A350 is primarily made out of a lot of composite material. But they were able to get 3 of the 8 slides open on the A350. Now, with the nose gear broken, the front 2 slides are going to be at a very low angle, so it's going to be slow to deploy people out of those slides. Again, with the nose gear broken, the rear of the aircraft is up real high, so the rear slide is at a very steep and dangerous angle for people to slide down and land with and not get injured. So great job by the crew and the passengers for a nice, controlled evacuation. Remember, the FARs in design of these aircraft require you to be able to safely evacuate in 90 seconds all the passengers on board that aircraft using only half of the slides. The A350 has a total of 8 slides. These guys only had 3 slides to work with. Further complicating the evacuation, here on the right side of the aircraft, apparently this number 2 engine did not shut down for whatever reason, whether the crew failed to shut it down or more than likely the engine refused to shut down or did not respond to the commands to shut the engine off. But these slides, these forward slides, are far enough forward of the engine to safely get the people out of there. And good job by the crew not deploying these additional slides, which would have put people out directly in front of this still running engine. Now, if we look at the damage to the A350 before it was burned up, we see the nose dome, radome, smashed in quite a bit. And we also see damage here on the engine nacelles, on both nacelles, on the inboard side, a pretty good rip in the engine nacelles. The wings look to be unscathed. Here's a view of the outboard side of the left engine nacelle with a big dent in it right there, just below the wings. And here's a closer look at the rip on the inboard side of the nacelle on the left engine. Here's a view of a similar rip on the inboard side of the right engine of the A350 with a similar dent on the outboard side. So if you draw to scale or have 2 scale models of the aircraft involved, like what the Seattle Times has begun to do here in this illustration, is it possible that the Dash 8 was all the way out on the runway, on the center line, in the takeoff position, when the Airbus landed virtually right on top of the Dash 8, smashing the nose dome on the T-tail of the Dash 8, and then running both engines right through the wings of the Dash 8. It's just a miraculous situation that this didn't become a complete and total disaster. There was very little left of the Japanese Coast Guard Dash 8 after the collision. While this is all very preliminary information at this time, investigators will be able to pretty quickly find out what happened here, but finding out why this happened and how to prevent this in the future will take some time. In the meantime, it's a very important reminder for all of us the importance of correctly reading back and transmitting all runway and taxiway instruction clearances. Thank you so much for your support, especially the folks over on Patreon that make this content possible. See you here.